When I'm thinking of you, it makes me sad and blue. Thinking that I'm not the one dreaming next to you. Baby, I'm crazy about you. I'm just about to lose my mind.
Oh, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Babz.
Happy New Year, Jeff Grant. It's a new year.
It's a new
decade.
It's a new decade. we are 2 days and a wake up into the into the new year.
Are we gonna use prison language?
Uh-oh.
If y'all just tuned in, you've got Babz Rawls-Ivy and Jeff Grant. This is the Criminal Justice Insider, sponsored by the New Haven Community Foundation, the Greater New Haven Community Foundation, the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven.
Now more than ever.
And we are happily supported by our loved ones.
Yes, Andrew Kaplan and
Lynn Springer.
Oh yeah, I hope you're listening in this morning. This is a great show we're gonna have today.
I'm excited. Our guest today is Reginald Dwayne Betts, lawyer, lecturer on criminal justice, and now poet.
Poet.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dwayne.
So you're a poet, an essayist, a national spokesperson for Campaign for Youth Justice. You write and lecture about the impact of mass incarceration on American society. You're the author of 2 previous collections of poetry, Bastards of the Reagan Era and Shaheed Reads His Own Poem as a memoir. So, and A Question of Freedom, which is a memoir, right?
Right.
You're a graduate of the Yale Law School. You live in New Haven with your wife and your 2 sons. And so I know about you because you were trying to pass the bar in Connecticut and they were giving you drama about it.
A little bit. Well, I was trying to get admitted. But yeah.
Yes, you were trying to get admitted. You had passed the bar,
right,
done your time, went to law school, went to one of the best law schools in the world, and then you was trying to just get seated at the bar. And they were like,
And one of our past guests, Marcus Bullock, who's a good friend of yours.
Yeah, that's my man.
Yeah, he was on the show. And he told me that we should have you on the show. I said, but you got to get me Dwayne's email address, or I can't do that. It took him like 6 months to get me your email.
Oh, if I'd have known, I would have just called up people he knew, or hung around a good coffee shop. You just showed up.
That's probably true. Yeah, and not to get a bar a little bit of credit. It's strange. I mean, we set up these processes in society in terms of how we think about people post incarceration.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened is this: I had a sort of tremendous amount of support, and maybe even if I would have just let the whole thing play out without, because somebody wrote something. A guy I know named Nate Robinson. He wrote something. He's the editor of a magazine called Current Affairs, and so he wrote something, and then it got picked up by the New Haven Register.
Yeah,
and then somebody from the New York Times wrote an op-ed, and so it kind of blew up. Maybe even before they had a chance to assess the situation.
Interesting.
But my thing is always, so I give them credit to say that, maybe when they would have assessed the situation and depended on all those things, I would have been admitted.
Mm-hmm.
But my thing
I think that's a reach. Don't you think that's you think that's not a reach?
No, I don't know.
No,
I don't think it's a reach. No, I actually don't think it's a reach, because there's a lot of people I know, not a lot, but I know people who have, felony records who have been admitted.
Okay.
I know people who have felony records who had to rumble to get admitted. I know people who had to have hearings, and I didn't even have to have a hearing. But I guess my point is, I would rather the emphasis not be on the Connecticut bar, because the Connecticut bar acts the same way that the manager at Safeway acts.
Okay.
The Connecticut bar acts the same way as like the manager at Popeyes, and definitely at whoever's running most newsrooms in the country, which is to say that they'll say, yeah, Dwayne has a record. Let us think about this for a minute. And so my push is that we need to reevaluate the whole way that we imagine how and when and under what circumstances somebody with a criminal conviction should be able to fully enter society. And we should just be straight up about that. And so what happens is the Connecticut bar exam, the Connecticut bar, they probably never confronted this before.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, well, how do we deal with this? What is required? And so, hopefully going forward, we get to the point where the things that are required are better articulated, because it's a certain amount of stress that I had to deal with, independent of what I say might have happened at the end, regardless of what happened in the middle. Like at the beginning, it was a serious amount of stress that I had to deal with, thinking that, this thing I wanted to do might not happen. And, these hundreds of thousands of dollars that I've invested in doing this thing, like, might be wasted. And you got, I got people depending on me. I got people relying on me. And so that was a kind of stress that I dealt with that, I don't think the Connecticut bar, even in their communications with me,
understood or got or even had an idea about.
Yeah, it was a little strange because I've seen you speak before, and in the paper, there was a lot written about it all over the country, really, and it kind of puts you in a martyr victim kind of mode. And when you speak, you certainly don't come off like a martyr or a victim, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm either one of those things. But I do think I think though, when people wrote about it, people were saying like, I was able to become an example for this thing that happens all the time across the country. And I think the point became, it was different tones. Some pieces took the tone of like, Dwayne is exceptional and this is absurd that he is dealing with this. But some other pieces took the tone to say that this is an opportunity to seriously think about what people all across this country confront. And this is just the perfect storm. This is somebody whose story could get out nationally because there frankly isn't a single reason to not admit me to the bar. And the very fact that I had to go through this means that we have a system that's seriously flawed.
Are you practicing law right now?
Yes. It's complicated. It's not complicated because I think people say, "Are you practicing law?" It's sort of like, well, am I practicing poetry right now? It's like,
I'm not doing either
but
one.
You know what? I would say yes.
Right. That's
because
what I'm saying.
It's always you're always working on.
Right. That's what I'm saying. And so they say,
well,
are
it's
you
funny.
practicing? It's like, so one thing people really say when they say, "Are you practicing law?" They mean like, are you getting paid to provide legal services to a client? And what I say is the kind of law that I practice anyway, people don't pay for. So I'm helping people, I'm representing people as they go through the parole process.
Is that what you thought you would do with this law degree? What did you imagine when you said, "I'm gonna go to law school"? What was the dream?
Was it a dream? I don't know if it was a dream. The dream was not to have to pay my student loans for 3 years. Yeah, and I say that only partly in jest. I think that you come from where I come from. I don't know if you dream in the same kind of way. You talk to somebody who was like, "What was the dream?" It's like, well, I always imagined that I would finish law school and then I would go and work for the Department of Justice, or that I would go and I would work for one of these 5 or 6 law firms in New York and I would do transactional law. No, for me, I went to help people get out of prison.
Really?
Yeah, mostly everything I do is related.
Where you come from? Where you from? Where your people's from?
I'm from PG County, so Maryland, right outside of DC. My folks from DC.
Well-to-do or poor?
Well-to-do or poor? I'm not well-to-do.
Because there's some black people from Prince George County that are
I don't know
well-to-do.
I might know a few of them now actually, but we were.
It's Prince George County is where a lot of well-to-do black people come from.
Yeah, no, that's not true. Actually, the trick is that PG County is where a lot of professional athletes live. You play for the Bullets. Well, I guess they call it the Wizards now, but you play for the Bullets. You play for the other team with the name that I won't say. You play for the Capitals. Now you play for the Nationals, and you got a lot of athletes, and they raise the the level of black wealth that seems to exist in PG County, and it's been called one of the richest black counties in the country.
That's what I Oh,
Yeah, but I'm from
but
Suitland,
not just
though.
athletes, but
Yeah, you got professional folks, but
yeah.
I'm from Suitland though, and I
okay.
actually
All right.
and I think that even that it's strange because if you live in a place like they might say the same thing about New Haven, and you'd be like, what?
Oh
And
no,
like
they
it's
do.
more black lawyers in New Haven than most cities. It's like, is that true?
Mhm.
It's like, oh, you mean a handful of professors? You mean all of the folks that work at Yale? I mean, they lend a perception of what the city looks like that might not necessarily be accurate. And so for me, growing up in PG County, we weren't like dirt poor, but we were like working class.
Mm-hmm.
But
okay.
Did you just finish a judicial clerkship? Did that happen?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I clerked for a judge in Philadelphia on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals.
So how'd that happen? I mean, all of a sudden you find yourself with a judicial clerkship after going through this kind of firestorm.
Well, I had the clerkship before.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, but when you get the clerkship, it's usually like you'll get it, and then a judge, they bring a new group of clerks on every year.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes a judge is hired 2 years out,
Mhm.
so you might get it your first year in law school. You might get it your second year in law school.
Mhm.
I got my clerkship, I guess, my second year in law school, but it wasn't until it wasn't going to happen until like a year or two after I graduated. I guess 2 years after I graduated. So just planning ahead.
Yeah.
And so I knew that was going to happen. So that was part of it too. It was sort of like, okay, I passed the bar, but now I'm not sure if I'll be admitted to the bar. I'm working right across the street
Mhm.
at the public defender's office here in New Haven. I'm representing clients, and then I know like the next year I'm going to work for a judge that's on a court that's like right below the Supreme Court. It's a really prestigious job. It's a coveted job. It suggests that I'm a young lawyer or soon to be young lawyer who has a bright future, and then the rug is pulled from under me, and I don't know what's going to happen next. But it worked out, and the clerkship was great. It's just a chance to see a lot of different aspects of the law in a really compressed period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I follow you on social media. I guess a lot of people do, but
I don't
enough.
follow you.
Oh,
I need to follow you. I guess.
I said not enough. That was like a lot of people do. I don't. You know,
You know what? Now I'm gonna go follow you now.
No, I follow you. And one of the things that I thought was interesting was just as you finished the clerkship, you wrote that now you're free to speak your mind differently again. I guess you had to behave.
Oh
as
yeah,
a
because
clerk.
it's not like you had to behave as a clerk. I mean, it's like you have cases though, and so if so much of your life, one, you couldn't have political opinions, and you might have political opinions that have nothing to do with any case that you have.
Yeah.
First of all, none of my opinions mattered anyway. Like the judge is the boss, right? But it could lend the appearance that like what I say.
I think you need to write for
reflects,
comedy.
no, and because it could lend the appearance that what I say reflects
Yeah.
the opinions of the judge.
Mhm.
And if you got cases that's coming before you,
Sure.
and you like me and you think about issues around like immigration or the criminal justice system, and now you have opinions about things that very well may be in the court. And the point is, when these cases come to the court, like you will know the cases in the Third Circuit, but you won't know what judges before. And I might say something to make you think, oh, that case is before
Yeah, exactly.
Dwayne's judge.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when did you know you were a poet?
True.
Were you a kid writing poetry?
Nah.
Were you in
That's that
college
thing
writing
about-
poetry?
I was in prison writing poetry.
Really? That's when it came. The talent showed up.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say it that way. I got sentenced to 9 years. And I was 16.
What'd
And
you do? I don't know your story that well, so I don't.
Well, I'm glad you admitted to me that you didn't know it. I thought that you were just saying that to tease up the question for the audience.
No.
But now,
when Babz says she doesn't know, she doesn't know.
I was like, man, Babz, she's a great actress, because I really think she doesn't know at all. But apparently you don't know. But no, so when I was 16, I grew up in PG County, Maryland, like I said. I got a late birthday in November. So when I was 16, I was actually in the 11th grade. And me and my friend Marcus Bullock, we went to a neighboring town and carjacked somebody.
Mm.
And it was the first time, December 7th, 1996, first time I ever held a gun.
Mm.
Probably held it for 20 minutes. And carjacked this guy, drove off with his car. The next day we got caught at the mall. So December 8th, we got locked up. And at the time I was going to be an engineer, and I really didn't understand what kind of engineer I would be. I thought I was going to be a computer engineer,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't even really know if that's what it was, but I was learning Fortran, I was learning Pascal, I was learning C++, so I was learning these computer programming languages, and I thought that that's how I would sort of build a life for myself. Planned on going to Georgia Tech, playing point guard. I figured one of those two things would happen, and if I played point guard, both would happen. Probably I wasn't going to play point guard at Georgia Tech, but I had dreams though, so those were the dreams. Man.
Okay.
And didn't get locked up, you know, and I never gotten locked up before. Never really committed a serious crime like that before. You know, I smoked a bunch of weed, did little things, fights in the neighborhood, stuff like that. But like I said, I it wasn't predicted for me, and I was one of those kids I think who thought about the future kind of obsessively.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about crime. I read Things Fall Apart that year. You know, I read probably read Man, Child, and the Promised Land.
Chibbit. Oh yes, you're reading all my favorites.
And I definitely read Makes Me Wanna Holler.
Yeah.
Because I had some friends who got locked up, and so that book fell into my lap. I read this book called Racehorse, right? The autobiography of Albert Simple.
Mm-hmm.
And this cat is from Alabama, he from the South. He ended up at the Parchment Farm. But like I read all of these books, and it's not like I was training myself to understand the criminal justice system. And in fact, it's 1996, so nobody's saying things like mass incarceration anyway.
Yeah.
Even though you in the thick of the super predator era, and I knew at that time it was cases where juveniles were being tried as adults, because I mean it was so high profile that like Vibe would do an article about some kid in Michigan who got tried as an adult because he shot somebody and killed them.
Mm-hmm.
Or it was that case in Florida where the kid killed his little sister.
Yeah.
Said that they were just playing with a wrestling move, and he
Oh
got
yeah,
tried.
yeah.
So like these things were in the ethos, and where they were in the air, right, bubbling up around me. And I had a classmate that got tried as an adult because he had murdered somebody. I had another classmate that had got murdered. And so the point is that all of these things were sort of in the backdrop of my childhood, but yet I didn't think that they were predictive, and we weren't having conversations around what any of this stuff meant, because again, like mass incarceration wasn't a thing. And so if you went to jail, it's because you was like a thug, and it's not like we need to talk about the community, the environment, violence, how we negotiate this space as young people. It was sort of like, if you one of those dudes that walk on the other side of the street, you just one of those dudes that walk on the other side of the street.
But you weren't really one of those dudes, though.
Yeah, well,
you
I don't
just
know, 'cause-
happened to cross the street for this particular.
Yeah, but you are, I mean, you are where you live, and you are the people you hang around. And one of the narratives is that you can't expect young people to, I mean, shit, I got friends now who do things that I don't do. I mean, they just don't happen to commit crimes.
Mm-hmm.
But some of them are like, you know, not the greatest. I mean, shit, I'm not the greatest husband. You know what I mean? I'm not like the greatest father at times. And you know, it was 2 years that I was telling the IRS, I'll pay you back later. You know, like it was times when I had, so the point is that, yeah, maybe, you know, the diversity of friendships that I had as a kid might not have reflected well on me depending on who you were, but it reflected well on me in the fact that like I was a human being living in the area where I lived, and I just should have made better decisions, but those better decisions weren't necessarily don't hang around this person or that person. So in terms of stepping out there, all the way out there, I only stepped all the way out there one time, but I might have just got lucky.
Mm-hmm.
You know, had I not got caught, I might have been a stick-up kid. So I don't want to act like I was some, you know, saint that just got caught out there this one time.
I'm not thinking saint, but I'm thinking we're in that, in hindsight, because now you're a grown man with a family, right? Like you past 16. So in hindsight, what could have been the intervention at that point? Like what could have changed that trajectory of your life at that moment?
Yeah,
Before that moment.
Yeah, so I think it's two things though, right? So first, I would have told my 16-year-old self that you got this category and group of friends, and you need to create spaces where you could deal with them and recognize that there are some spaces where you can't deal with them, and understand that there may be a moment where your lives are so different that it's too much tension when you try to come together.
That sounds like an HBCU education.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't really.
Oh no, I'm telling you because I went to HBCU, and that is the underlying conversation at a HBCU.
Yeah, no, it's probably true. I just don't like HBC. I don't like Howard University, and I
well, that's only one.
I know, but I wanted to make sure I said that on record, just in case you went to Howard. I'd be like,
no, but my friends do.
Yeah, no.
Dean Trullier, if you're listening to this, we apologize.
No, I had a full academic scholarship to Howard University, and they took it back from me when they found out that I had a 3 felony convictions.
Well, you know, black people are the worst to each other.
Yeah, but my wife went to Howard, so in some sense, I love Howard.
Is she Greek?
Nah, she black.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. But anyway, so all of that happens, and I mean that would be my intervention though. For real, I would say, Dwayne, you got to make serious decisions, and you just said you want to be an engineer, and you taking these classes that suggest that is what you want to be. So what is the problem? And I would have asked myself what the problem was, and of course, the problem was that I had adults around me who didn't understand that I could live in two worlds.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, who were the adults around you? Because I remember hearing those messages, right? I remember hearing those kinds of things.
I don't know. I mean, the public school system. Again, like I went to a school that, the schools always they choose who is the person that we expect to be successful, and who is the person that we expect to get murdered. And I was like one of the people they expect to get murdered. So,
really? Because you seem like that somebody would have seen your brilliance. Right? Like somebody would have seen your brilliance at that age.
Nah, you seeing a patina. I worked really hard to develop this patina. You got back in the day, this was like underdeveloped.
Don't we all?
But you know what, Dwayne, there are people out there that can see that. That there are teachers out there that can see the unpolished gem.
I had a teacher once. So a teacher saw me smoking a blunt outside.
And
I used to smoke every day. And in retrospect, I might have been like, as an adult, I might have been like, yo, are you dealing with some things? Because to smoke that much, right? And you way too young to act like this is just a part of your routine of living.
Wow.
Marijuana is not coffee. So as I would have hoped an adult would have asked me like, what is going on? But nobody did that. And this one cat, he was my AP US history teacher. He saw me smoking a blunt. And I came into class, and everybody knew I smoked weed because the thing is, you can't smoke weed in a cold area and not have your whole body smell like weed. I mean, you can smoke weed and not have your whole body smell like weed, but that means that you got like a level of affluence where you could like smoke and then change clothes, or you could smoke in a space that's not, or you intelligent enough to not want to smoke in a car and had a whole car get smoked up because you believe it makes you higher. You know what I mean? Like you got circumstances that you could care about how you smell and not want to smell like weed because you're not smoking for everybody else. But I was 15. I'm smoking for everybody else, right? Yeah. Like I'm smoking both to get high and so you know that I'm high. So I'm smoking this blunt.
That's interesting. That is a very interesting. That's an interesting thought.
And you don't care about the consequences of that in that moment either. I mean, you just...
Well, I mean, there were no consequences.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I mean, I'm smoking parallel to my AP US history class, and I got this class first. So first, it's 7 o'clock in the morning, because school started at 8. I'm smoking a blunt. The teacher sees me. I don't put it out, because I'm not about to waste this good weed. So I smoked the blunt, coming to class. He started calling me Smokey. The whole year, I got locked up that year, but so the whole year until I got locked up, he called me Smokey. Now his class was graded on a curve, but I had an A. Me and one other student, this young white girl, we both had A's in the class, independent of the curve. So in his mind, he was like, man, I mean, he's doing his work, he's really smart. He just smoked, and he probably thought I'm gonna call him Smokey to embarrass him in front of his friends, and then maybe he'll stop. And I remember one day he did jack me up in the hallway, and was like, yo, what are you doing with your life? You know, you're going to end up messing your life up really bad. You need to make some better decisions. But the thing is, can you curse on this show?
No.
So, and I said that, but I said that to demonstrate that I could not curse for 50 minutes straight. But this guy,
I've seen you speak.
Oh no, you got one in earlier.
I didn't.
Yes, you did. Wait, when you go back and listen to this again, you got one in.
Oh man, I didn't even hear that. But this guy, he actually didn't know me though, and so he was making. And it's difficult to know somebody, and it's difficult to know a kid, and it's difficult to even imagine inserting yourself in all of the things that they may be grappling with. So maybe he saw something, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even with him seeing something, he wasn't equipped because that wasn't even his job.
See, I'm fascinated by this whole line of conversation because I think there's some gifts in here that school systems and youth serving organizations can really take some leverage from.
I am certainly the only person from my high school to graduate from Yale Law School, at least from my class. And the thing is, and I don't even say that to brag, I say that to say that when I was a student, before I got in trouble, nobody would have predicted that.
Yeah.
I'm in the 11th grade. I don't know how to write a college essay. And if you're in 11th grade, you should already be working on this. You should be thinking about where you applying to. And so I just wasn't on that track, despite being at a magnet school and being in the sort of university college magnet type program. But anyway, all of that's to say I get locked up and that was my background, and I thought I would be an engineer, and then I get sentenced to 9 years, and I'm thinking
that's a lot. Is that a lot for a kid? That's a lot for a kid.
I mean, it's a lot for an adult. I have this carjacking carry life in Virginia though. So the way I think about it is that we have our sentencing schemes are absurd. And when you say something is a lot, then somebody else says, well, he was facing life in prison. And my minimum sentence was 23 years. So
my God.
So I got sentenced to 23. And then the judge.
But you were a kid.
Yeah, I know. Well, they said I was grown. And black children don't actually get to be children.
They don't get to be children.
And black folks don't even let I'm not even going to talk about that more. But we have situations in which too many of us don't allow children to be children. And we reinforce a narrative of, 12-year-old adults, 14-year-old adults, 15-year-old predators, and we reinforce that narrative. And then somebody like me makes a horrendous mistake and, commits a crime and probably scars somebody for life. The response is only to think about what punishment suffices, right? And not even to think about what punishment suffices because nobody's thinking about what happens on the back end anyway. Mm-hmm. But the point is, I get that time, and I'm like, man, what am I going to do with myself?
And where did they send you?
They sent me to prison.
Adult prison?
Yeah. They sent me to a bunch of adult prisons. But I told myself I would be a writer, and that's the thing that saved me. I said, I'm going to be a writer. And I was young enough and fool enough to, not even have to know what that meant. Yeah. Because I've read books. Like I said, we just talked about some of the books that I've been reading, before I got locked up. Mm-hmm. When I got locked up, I remember reading Baldwin, the short stories, but I read Giovanni's Room before I got locked up. Mm-hmm. I read Go Tell It on the Mountain before I got locked up. But anyway, I remember reading Ernest Gaines' A Lesson Before Dying. And that's the first book that I read cover to cover. Just I picked up, started reading, and didn't stop until the last page of the book. And so I had told myself I would be a writer, not really understanding what that would be, what that would look like. Just I'll be a writer. Mm-hmm. And then a couple of years later, I was in solitary confinement for the third time. So I was probably 17, and I've been in a hole 3 times already. Mm-hmm. And this stretch was 6 months. And the cells
at 17, they allow for that?
Yeah, nobody's watching. Nobody's watching, and quiet as kept, I carjacked somebody. Most of society didn't care what happened to me anyway. Yeah. You people would come out of the woodworks to defend me because the Connecticut bar might not admit a Yale trained attorney, right? Who had, served 9 years in prison at 16. All of a sudden, the time I served in prison is a thing that heightens people's
fascination
and who I am, right? Mm-hmm. But when I was serving that time in prison,
nobody gave a damn.
Before I got sentenced to that,
you just
time
another
in prison,
nigga in jail.
And and spitefully though, and I'm not.
Yeah,
even,
I get it. I feel that.
And I'm not even saying that they're wrong. What I'm saying is we don't interrogate what has to happen for us to transform our belief in a person. and we don't interrogate maybe the idea that we could do that on the front end. My judge, when he sentenced me, said, I'm under no illusion that sending you to prison will help. But why are you sending me to prison?
And this is 20 years ago?
This is 20 years ago.
Yeah, we tend to forget how far this conversation has gotten in the last 20
and
years.
well, we also tend to forget how far it hasn't gotten.
That's
because
true.
when I was working,
that's where I'm at.
That's true.
I'm working in the public defender's office here
Mm-hmm.
a couple years ago, and I got clients that's 15
Mm-hmm.
that's going to jail for 26 months. Why are you sending somebody to prison for 26 months? I get it. He got a robbery beef.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. He's pleading guilty to robbery. But how do we imagine 26 months? This kid is not big enough to hold his own water at all.
Mm.
And you got all of these adults in a room acting as if this process looks like justice when, I mean, in some of these cases, I'm in the room and I'm thinking I'm the only one in this room that understands the possibilities of being broken just because you get sent to prison, let alone get sent to prison as a 15-year-old that weighs 110 pounds, right? But anyway, I'm in the hole. I get the book, The Black Poets, and I read Etheridge Knight, and I'm like, wait, Etheridge Knight did time in prison, then he became a poet, and he's in this book. And I just tell myself I'm gonna be a poet, and that's when I started writing poetry really seriously, and that's when so this is 1998, and from that point on, I've been a poet.
So give us read something that you like. I know you like everything.
Yeah, I gotta make clear.
I know you're like a father. I like all my children equally.
Yeah, well, you know, I read this one since you said the word father. It's about my son, and you know, the thing is, so it's 2 points. One, felon, go pick it up from Atticus. Can I say that?
Yes, you absolutely can say. Listen, I'll hold it up.
Yeah. Oh, people can see us?
Yes,
Oh,
we're
yeah,
live.
yeah,
we're live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube.
I did not know that. I might have wore something a little fancier than this. You know?
No, you look great. Always better on black.
But so the wild thing is, and I wrote about this in my New York Times piece. But the wild thing is, I get sworn in right down the street, and when you get sworn in, you know, you stand at the same spot if you were a defendant. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
And I got my man standing beside me, attorney Trey Bruce, who works over here. He's a public defender, and he was my supervising attorney, and so he's standing beside me and sort of sponsor me into the bar, so to speak. And the judge, I knew him too, so he's swearing me in. You're not supposed to talk in these moments. You're supposed to just get sworn in and go about your business. But after I get sworn in, I turn around and talk. This is, you know, my mom is there, my grandmother's there, my uncle's there, one of my aunts is there. People are there who saw me get sentenced. My wife is there, both of my sons are there. One of the local prosecutors came to support me. So it's a lot of people there, right? Or not a lot, but it's enough. So I turn and I say, the last time I was in a courtroom like this with my mom, I got sentenced to 9 years in prison. But what I'm not realizing is that my young son, my 5-year-old, doesn't know that I spent time in prison. And I'm not realizing it just because I'm caught up in the moment.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I look at him and his face like kind of goes. And then he gets up, he sits on his brother's lap, says something to his brother, then like sits back down. And it hit me, you know, it's like it follows you. And I'm aware that it follows me, but sometimes I forget that it follows everybody else. And that the reason why it follows me and it follows everybody else who loves me is because I picked up the pistol and I carjacked somebody. And that's the thing that I gotta grapple with. And that's, for me, sometimes part of the conversation about mass incarceration that we miss. Yeah. Because I gotta explain this to my 5-year-old and he does not
has no understanding of this at all.
He's like, mass incarceration is when you rob people. But so then I wrote this poem because later on that night, I had to really tell him, you know, because that was one sentence and he got it, but I wasn't sure if he got it. But I couldn't pretend like he didn't get it, so I had to tell him. Essay on reentry. At 2 a.m., without enough spirit spilling into my liver to know to keep my mouth shut, my youngest learned of years I spent inside a box. A spell, a kind of incantation I was under, not whiskey, but history. I robbed a man. This months before he would drop bucket after bucket on opposing players. The entire bedraggled bunch, 5 and 6, and he leaping as if every layup erases something. That's how I saw it. My screaming, coaching, sweating presence recompense for the pen. My father has never seen me play ball as part of this. My oldest knew, told of my crimes by a stranger. Tell me we aren't running towards failure is what I want to ask my sons. But it is 2 in the a.m. The oldest has gone off to dream in the comfort of his room. The youngest, despite him seeming more lucid than me, just reflects cartoons back from his eyes. So when he tells me, Daddy, it's okay, I know what's happening is some straggling angel lost from his pack finding a way to fulfill his duty, lending words to this kid who crawls into my arms, wanting more than stories of my prison, the sleep that he fought while I held court at a bar with men who knew that when the drinking was done, the drinking wouldn't make the stories we brought home any easier to tell.
That's beautiful.
Powerful.
That's pretty good. I
Thank you.
love that.
You know, Dwayne, this poster that's in back of me, this one here, the Criminal Justice Insider poster, I have that same one hanging in my office at home. And my 6-year-old granddaughter comes over, and it's right about her height. And I'm just like waiting for the day for her to, just ask me, Grandpa, what is that?
Right.
And you just took me there.
So do you have a thought? Because this makes me think of Ta-Nehisi Coates, his book to his son. I mean, do you feel that there is some way forward for you to have a larger conversation? Because you got sons, you're raising sons. I mean, I've raised sons. Do you feel that there is some more to say about your life and what has happened to you that they need?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny. Now that they're getting older, I recognize
because they're coming up in this world where, I mean, black skin is weaponized. So
yeah, and one of the things that I am realizing more as they get older, my oldest is 12, is that you need stories to survive.
mm-hmm.
And when I grew up, that's what I didn't have. I didn't have stories. And I mean stories that's more than horror stories. Stories that's more than, don't end up like this person. You need stories that are able to inform where your steps might be and where your steps shouldn't be. But the stories that they try to convey all of that in a way that makes them know a life better. And in my case, I hope it's that makes them know my life better.
That sounds very Alex Haley.
Yeah.
It sounds very Alex Haley, right?
I like these folks you comparing me to,
Well, no, I mean, because I remember I saw an early interview with Alex Haley when he was just beginning to, write Roots, and people were like mad at him. He was like, why, like, why are you dragging all this up?
Yeah.
Like, why are you
Dredging.
Why are you creating this narrative around slavery, and why should we be proud of that? And he was talking about, he's like, because these are our stories, and they'll be lost if we don't tell them.
I mean, yeah,
they can guide us.
I guess Marcus was here. I had a book release party, and we took a picture, and it was me, Marcus, my 2 sons, his son, his daughter, my wife, his wife. Mm-hmm. And then he posted it on Facebook the other day, and it was wild because he posted this, and I was like, wait, when did we take that? Because we were just together in DC. I guess is the 8 of us. We were together, like, celebrating Christmas. Mm-hmm. We took our families out to some kind of thing on the National Harbor. Or it was somewhere, I don't know where it was. But anyway, the point is that you could have took another picture of us. Mm. He was 15 when we got locked up, and I was 16. Mm. And in that picture, we headed off into the penitentiary. Now that picture doesn't exist. I mean, we could create one from that time period, and you could see the 2 of us headed off to prison, or you could put out mugshots side by side. Mm. Now the thing is, when you look at that first picture of us at 16 and 15 headed to prison, there are few of us who have the imaginative space to believe that those 2 will be who we are now. Mm. I was the best man at his wedding. He was the best man at my wedding. I'm his son's godfather. He my first son's godfather. I've been married for 11 years. He going on like 10. We both successful. But the imaginative leap that we were required first to make. You know, we were required to make that leap as children to believe that like this day is possible. That leap is what I imagine needing to give my children, right? And that leap is not just about the details of our lives, but about the stories that we told ourselves and about the things in our life that happen that create the kind of stories that make, one, it possible for us to go from where we were to where we are. But I think, two, what I want my sons to really understand is, how is it possible to be me, right? Or how is it possible for him to be him? But just how is it possible to be a thriving, thinking, thoughtful, sensitive, feminist cat in the world? And I don't even know if I'm a feminist cat in the world, right? Because I struggle, but it's an ambition, you know. It's something that I've reached for, you know. Like,
but that's good. I admire that, because I take issue when people say I'm a Christian. How do you know? Like, you have to aspire to be a Christian. Like, it's an opus. It's always a work in progress. Like, you're just not there. It is always a reach. Yeah. So I think you got another book.
Yeah, I mean, I hope I got at least 2, 3.
Really?
I mean, you know, one of the struggles, writing is hard.
I know.
And it is but one of the hardest parts about writing is that I have come to believe that the way that you think, at least for me, is to write. I talk a lot, but I know that when I talk, I'm often coming off the cuff. I don't have the time to process and evaluate my thoughts, and that my best thoughts happen really as a combination of both the sort of jazz improvisation off the cuff. But I've said this thing so many times that even though it's off the cuff, it's like a riff that I've been working on for months.
Yeah, for sure.
And to me, like, writing is like that.
Yeah.
And so the reason why it's hard is because you got to test your thoughts out. And writing to my son, like, if I was to do the James Baldwin, you know, my dungeon shook letter to his nephew, if I was to write a letter to my sons in that same mode, what I struggle with now is figuring out what it is that I want to say, though, because, you know, this story has to be more than about prison and incarceration.
Yeah.
But prison and incarceration is so saturates my understanding of the Black experience that I haven't figured a way to write outside of that. And I don't, and I mean, that just might be my flaw, my failure, but I think it might just be the fact that I still know people who are incarcerated who, like, I'm not doing nearly what I might be able to do for them, because it's only but so much time, and, you know, how do you do everything? So
before we let you go, can you read page 55? I just think that's such a beautiful poem.
Page 55. Oh, you think that was beautiful?
I do. Because you never get to sort of see that level of tenderness and vulnerability, I think.
All right. Parking lot. A confession begins when I walk into a parking lot. Near empty, the darkness a kettle. The burner against my skin cold like any story that ends this way. The parking lot more of an opening than an opportunity. The man was waiting for home. Asleep in a car after a working man's day. Everything I know of home is captured by the image of a man running from the police. His arms flailing unlike any bird you'd expect to fly. Walking into a parking lot begins a confession. The burner is a key, and afterwards there will be no home to find. My boots echoed against the black of asphalt. Hours before I flashed the burner on that family, I kissed my kid goodnight. I told a woman that I loved her. But when has love ever been enough?
I like that.
Beautiful.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
You want to talk about, before we go, the inspiration for that? You got like 2 seconds.
2 seconds. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a storyteller. And I think as a poet, I try to tell stories. And I try to tell stories that remind us that even in some of the most brutal acts, it might be a bit of tenderness. And part of life is figuring out how to make that tenderness more profound, more visible, you know, more like there in the world than the brutality that right now masks the tenderness we all got.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, lovely.
This has been a pleasure.
Yeah. Before we go, pitch the book.
You guys,
Yes.
or Kyle's gonna write us and send us hate mail.
No, for real, legit. This is what I think, though. I mean, I think that I'm trying to make Felon I'm trying to think of myself as a mediocre rapper in the 90s, where when you came out the first week, no, for real, like, you come out the first week, if you sell 20,000, they would call your CD a weed plate. They would be like, this has no value.
Yeah.
You know, they would call it like a Frisbee, right?
Yeah.
But as a writer, as a poet, you know, I mean, we selling 500 books, 1,000 books.
Mm-hmm.
And if I think that my life matters, if I think that the substance of these words matter, the idea is that people got to get it. And that's why I do stuff like this, but that's why I do readings. That's why I tell people to look, the poems, a lot of them exist on the internet. You could read it, you could try it out. But really, when we talk about transforming lives, it's like somebody said, if I get your book, will it change my son's life? And I said, listen, books aren't miracles in that way. But if
they are. They are.
No, this is how I think the book is a miracle, though, right? I think the book is a miracle because if you get my book and you give it to your son and you read the poems and they spark conversations, those conversations change lives. Yeah. Like people think, I think that the stories, the substance of the stories are what transforms lives. And so for me, every time I give somebody a book, the idea is I'm giving you a book and I'm going to have this conversation with you. You know, I've given out some books I bought last year, you know, 10, 15 copies, giving it to people and said, now we're going to talk about this. And I tell them why I gave it to them. So my thing is you get my book and it opens up a world of conversations, and those conversations, even if they just happen in your head, that's the thing that will transform my life. And so my life was changed by a book, but it wasn't just that this cat gave me this book. It was that he gave me the book and I read it and I carried it around in my head. And somehow I thought that it mattered that I could tell those stories to other people.
And that's the magic of a book.
Right. Now I agree. But you got to remind people, don't just run around giving your family members books and not talking to them.
Oh yeah.
You know, you got to do more than just give them. You got to say, look, I got this book in page 55. This one's a keeper. You should read page 55. Like if you give my book to somebody and tell them to read page 55, all of a sudden my book matters in a different way.
Oh, you know I'm gonna do that because that's what I do. I do it already.
Go pick up Felon from Atticus. Read page 55.
I'll tell you what. People Get Ready bookstore on Whaley Avenue.
People Get Ready. I'm doing an event there.
I know you in February. You're gonna be there talking and signing your books. People Get Ready in February, and have you been over there? It's beautiful over there.
Not yet, but
it's a beautiful space over there.
I will go before my event. People Get Ready bookstore on Whaley Avenue.
On Whaley Avenue, and they got your books already stocked, so people can run over there and get them now.
I'm gonna go sign them. So if you go get one, it's signed.
All right. Then I'm gonna come and buy some so I can give them out, and then I'm gonna put a bookmark on page 55. I'm like, this Babz favorite right here.
Well, thank you guys for having me. It was fun.
It was good talking to you.
Yeah, Dwayne, thank you so much for coming here.
Jeff, this was a good conversation. I think you're our first guest for the new year.
Oh yeah,
and I think it set the tone.
It's a way to start 2020.
I think so.
I think this is proof positive. We got to go to a 2-hour format.
I know. Oh my gosh, yes. Because we could talk to him all day with this whole conversation. I feel very uplifted. So Jeff, our next show is Friday, January 17th with Serena Liguri, Executive Director of New Hour for Women and Children.
And she'll be here, driving up from Long Island.
Okay. And that's it, I guess, for the new year. Anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, love to our loved ones and to the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven.
Now more than ever.
Oh, we reversed that one. All right.
Thank you so much, Harry.
Thank you, Harry.
Thank you, Reginald. It was lovely to talk to you. Seriously.
Thank you guys. It was great.
And I'm gonna go follow you on social media.
All right, cool.
love you, Babz.
Love you too, Jeff Grant.